You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host and bourbon-soaked storyteller, Juliette Miranda.
Well, hey there, y'all. It's Juliette Miranda, and welcome to episode 250 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. I have a bourbon-soaked story for you today about alternative forms of torture and out-of-tune strings. But first, I need bourbon. Cheers, y'all. Oh, that's good. It's awesome because today I am celebrating. I'm celebrating two things, actually. First, this is my birthday week. And y'all know I love my birthday, so cheers to that. But second, I am celebrating finally paying off my one credit card that was left over from Los Angeles. Yes, y'all, it took me almost 20 fucking years to pay off the debt that I accrued while living and being unemployed in Los Angeles. If that isn't sweet fucking relief, I don't know what would be. Oh, credit cards are just so insidious, aren't they? I remember the day that I got that card, too. I was in college, and the school was having its annual job fair. And there, situated among all the hiring managers and human resources reps, was a single table for Visa. Having a credit card seemed way too adult for me to even consider at the time, but the hustler lured me in by explaining a credit card was something every young professional needed. And he had a point. When the day came that I'd be, taking clients out to lunch, I certainly wasn't going to pay with a check. But I figured that was kind of a ways off. I would manage just fine until I got to Los Angeles. Oh, but this guy saw the hunger in my eyes, and he was all, "Oh, you're going to Los Angeles, are you? Well, how do you expect to rent an apartment without a credit history?" That was something I hadn't considered. And then all of a sudden, it was like a scene out of Grimm's fairy tales. I walked right into that candy house and I paid zero attention to the blazingly high interest rate flames that would eventually eat me alive. I filled out a form and I was approved on the spot. The card arrived 1 week later. It felt like a world of potential had been dropped into my sweaty hands, and as I stared at that shiny plastic card in awe, my dad offered me a little bit of advice. He said, "Daughter, use that card to buy one thing, pay it off immediately, and then forget you have it until there's an emergency." By emergency, I'm pretty sure my dad meant something like replacing a cracked head gasket on my car or surgery for my cat. And to be fair, my credit card came in very handy for just those things. But Los Angeles is an expensive town, one that demands quite a bit of a person, so there may have also been some emergency purchases like new boots and trips to the hair salon. And because I was such a good customer, every year my credit limit went up, which was useful because my income continually went down. Eventually, that credit card was the only thing I could use to pay my rent. And even after all of this time, I still remember the very last thing I used that card to pay for. Right before the bank wisely decided to close my account. Ooh, those were the dog days of my life in LA. A time of anxious stagnation when nothing worked and everything sucked. Any job seemed like a good job, regardless of how dramatically unqualified I may have been for it. Which is why I jumped at the opportunity when a local band, whom I'll call Nuys Blvd, approached me about managing them. It wasn't something I'd ever done before. Handling publicity and managing a band are two entirely different forms of torture. One requires charm, the other, a baseball bat. But I wasn't about to argue, not when the band offered me a cut of whatever they made. Of course, they weren't really making anything at the moment. Likely because they had never played a gig, didn't have a demo, and had no way for bookers to contact them. The one thing these Van Nuys guys did have going for them was great music, which was kind of surprising. The early 2000s were marked by an unpleasant combo of angry post-grunge bands, shitty nu metal bands, and fucking horrific pop-punk bands. Van Nuys Blvd wasn't like any of that. They were a pure rock band with old soul influences like the Byrds and Van Morrison to keep things interesting. My sometimes roommate Loopy was the one who dragged me off to their first rehearsal. She kept insisting that their music would change my life, and for once, regrettably, she was right. As we sat there in a couple of sagging lawn chairs in the warehouse they rehearsed in, I had one of those magical moments where the music is just so special you feel it rather than hear it. And I loved them. They were so goddamn good. Great fucking original songs, and, well, that was when I decided to open my dumb mouth. Good music always kind of did that to me. I'd either want to help or fuck the band. Fortunately, these guys were all way too cute to be my type. They needed direction, someone to help them get on the scene and get their music heard, and, well, I had ideas. Ideas I couldn't keep myself from barfing all over them until the lead singer stops me. He's all, "Whoa, slow down there. What's this press kit thing you speak of?" Turns out these guys were so green that none of them knew anything about the music business. All they knew was how to play. And that, they decided, was why they needed me. "You know the music scene," they said. "You know music and bands. Be our manager." I look at them. These guys were so shiny and unspoiled. They were like my own personal set of rock and roll Ken dolls. I couldn't resist. We shook hands, and I got to work managing my very own band. My first step was to help these guys prove their existence as a band beyond having a name. And that meant recording a couple songs for a demo. Fortunately, I knew people and was able to get the band into a shitty recording studio on the outskirts of East LA. It was only $20 an hour, and for that we got a room, a couple of garbage cans that plugged into a mixing board, and a disgruntled producer who smelled like fish food. The guys weren't exactly at their best that day, which I reasoned was likely a result of excitement and nerves. They missed a few lyrics and an entire bridge, which would all be easy mistakes to fix if we had cash, but we didn't. So 3 hours into kind of mediocre but very heartfelt songs later, the so-called producer handed us a master and a small stack of gleaming CDs and pushed us right out the door. Unfortunately, what I saved the band in recording expenses was exhausted on stupidity. My little valley boys forgot to lock the van in the parking lot and came out to find the windows smashed and radios stolen. Clearly, they weren't the most in-tune strings on the guitar. The cost of a new window depleted the band's resources considerably, which meant I had to come up with a new plan for having a band photo taken. Budget band photos are literally the worst. I mean, have you seen these things? They're fucking train wrecks. They're so bad that there is an entire website dedicated to mocking shitty band photos. And I didn't want that for my Van Nuys guys. But photos are not cheap, particularly in a town like LA that preys on every young and desperate entertainer who needs to see their picture hung on the wall of their dry cleaner. Every place I called wanted at least $500, which was making the brick wall behind my apartment complex look more and more appealing. I stood staring at it for a few minutes, wondering if there was any way possible to make it look even remotely cool, when a better option found me. It arrived via the value pack of coupons in my mailbox, which, quite honestly, I only opened out of boredom. Tucked between the carpet cleaning services and discount dentists, I found exactly what I needed in a place I never would have thought to look: Sears. the Sears Portrait Studio was having a sale on family pictures. Just $75 for a whole stack of 8x10s. Okay, so maybe my Van Nuys guys didn't fit the usual portrait studio style. But if we ditched the fall harvest background and killed the teddy bears, we could absolutely make it work. I quickly made us an appointment. The day of the photo shoot, I made sure to pick up the guys myself. Band time is a real thing, y'all. It operates about an hour, sometimes more, outside of the usual boundaries of a clock, and I wasn't about to lose our session to an oversleeping bass player. Now, Sears back then was just beginning its slow descent into retail oblivion. You could see it even from outside the limping facade. But when you walked in, you really knew you'd entered someplace awful. It smelled like sex and candy, but not the good song kind, but the stale, full of regret kind. The portrait studio was hidden in the basement. A fancy-dressed toddler was primping for her picture just as we arrived, and let me tell you, they were not expecting to see us walk in. The chick at the front desk points behind us, motioning to the hardware department, as if that was the only acceptable place for us to go, and I'm forced to insist, we have an appointment. She begrudgingly checks to confirm this. Her eyes scan over the 4 sour-looking band guys, and she says all snotty like, "Well, we take family pictures here." Yeah, well, band is another word for fucking family, sweetheart. There are no restrictions on my goddamn coupon either, so we're just gonna sit here until y'all are ready for us. It was a bit of an overstatement, seeing as how there wasn't any place to sit. But the guys pulled up a pile of nearby tires and made themselves comfortable. Now that we were checked in, I had a moment to take a look at the band. We hadn't discussed any sort of look in advance. It hadn't occurred to me, really. Adults shouldn't need guidance on how to dress. But then I remembered these aren't adults, they're musicians. And they looked like shit. Nothing they had on was clean. At least, it didn't look it. Really, what is it with guys and washing their clothing? I don't understand why this is a thing with so many fucking men. They'll throw 50 pairs of jeans into the washing machine along with all of their t-shirts and then act surprised when the shirts come out wrinkled. It's not hard. And I'll tell you, the fucking Van Nuys guys, they were a disaster. And I pointed this out, and they're all, "We're a rock and roll band. We look cool." And I'm like, "No, guys, you look homeless." Ugh. No one told me that being a band manager would also mean being a fucking mom. The toddler in a tiara still has another 15 minutes to go on her photo shoot, which gave me just enough time to go on a little shopping expedition. I get a list of sizes, and I run off to hunt the racks for something suitably rock and roll. Decent Levi's jeans were easy enough to find, and I load up my shopping cart with work boots and button-down shirts and whatever t-shirts I could find that didn't feature pictures of fish or Realtree camouflage. I fling a pile of clothing at each guy, and I yell, "Hey kid, watch your eyes," as my band starts to strip right there in the mall. Fucking band guys. Everyone around us is horrified, but they can't look away because, I'll tell you, these are some seriously good-looking boys. The typical band diet of cigarettes and sex had done them wonders, and within minutes, in their new clothing, I had the perfect foursome. They looked approachable yet troublesome, kind of like they'd been fired from Abercrombie for fucking in the dressing rooms. As I tucked the price tags out of sight, because we clearly weren't going to be buying any of this crap, I couldn't help but feel a little proud. My Van Nuys Blvd guys cleaned up all right. And once that camera started rolling, those boys were on. Even the moody guitar player traded his usual scowl for swagger, and I could see my kinda sorta misfit boys coming together as a band. It's just too bad it didn't translate on stage. By a pure stroke of luck, I'd gotten the boys 2 nights opening for a friend's much bigger band. Their own openers had dropped out at the last minute, and when I heard that, I pounced. I told my friend that my Van Nuys guys were going to be huge one day, that they were exactly what the rock scene was missing, and they just needed a break. Maybe my friend remembered being in that position himself once, or maybe he just wanted to sleep with me again. I don't know. It didn't matter, because he talked the promoter into adding my guys onto the bill, and they had their first gigs on the books. I was so proud. Them? They were less than enthusiastic. That moody guitar player asked, "Why are we opening for someone? Shouldn't we have our own show?" Dude, have you never been to a fucking rock club? This is how it works. I tell him, you are lucky you are playing on Sunset with a real band and not opening for the strippers out by the goddamn airport. This doesn't seem to make the guitar player feel any better, who just shrugs and wanders off. The other guys aren't sure whether they should follow his lead or give in to excitement. So I make the decision for them. I tell them, guys, this is a big deal. Kicking ass at this show will mean you can get even better ones later. You just have to go out there and prove you deserve it. My only ally in the band is, shockingly, the drummer. He's the one who rallies the guys, who manages to convince them that this gig is not beneath them, and I can breathe a short-lived sigh of relief. Sadly, all the pep talks in the world couldn't fix those first 2 shows. The guitar player was in his own fucking world. He started songs in different keys. He came into the chorus way too soon. He soloed far too long. Meanwhile, the damn singer kept fucking up the lyrics. He'd be singing one thing, the guys on backing vocals would be singing something else entirely. He couldn't keep up to save his life. I knew they were young and they were inexperienced, but any rationalization I might have had about maybe opening night jitters was just stabbed in the face the following night. I didn't know how it was possible, but the guys were worse. My friend, the one who had helped me set up this gig, he found me at the sound booth with my head in my hands. And he says, "Girlie, these guys suck. Run now before you get dragged down with them." I didn't know what the problem was. I mean, it was staggering because the band was so good during rehearsal. I knew there was potential there. And I figure I just had to find the right way to harness it. That's what a good manager does. They see the potential and they know how to work it. My first thought was, maybe they needed a different venue, which is kind of like blaming your pan when your bread doesn't rise. But I tried. I really tried. And it took a whole lot of searching, but I found just the place. Once upon a time, it had been a private country club. When the membership numbers dwindled, they converted it into a public golf course with a large clubhouse that hosted rock shows on weekends. Admittedly, it was a work in progress. We'd have to bring our own PA and sound guy, and the room still looked like it was better suited to coming out parties than bands. However, unlike every other club in town, we did not have to pay to play, and I managed to secure us a cash guarantee. The guys would also be the only band on the bill. They would have 4 hours to play whatever the fuck they wanted. I figured this is perfect for them. And I got the response from the band I wanted. They were thrilled. Egos were satisfied, and the guys anxiously began working on a set list while I started promoting the show. This whole band manager thing was, for the first time, feeling like a good fit for me. I felt like I was doing good, like I was getting it right. And things even started off great on gig night. The guys showed up on time, we got everything set up, a great crowd gathered, and then the fucking band took the stage. Oh, these guys were so frustrating. They sounded better, I'll give them that much. Timing had improved, and on my suggestion, the singer taped a cheat sheet of lyrics down by his monitor. But 5 songs in, that guitar player got cocky and he went rogue on the set list. We'd all agreed that they would play a mix of covers and originals. That was how it was done. I mean, for starters, they didn't have 4 hours of original music. So they needed to balance crowd pleasers and ego stroking. But oh no. Right in the middle of the first set, the damn guitar player decides he's too good to play Van Morrison's Into the Mystic. He decided to play one of their originals. Again. No one gave this memo to the rest of the band, who weren't listening, so they're all several bars into Mystic when they realize what's happening. They're effectively playing 2 different songs at once, and the audience can clearly see shit's going down as they yell at each other over the notes. The song is over by the time they get it kind of right, and by then the guitarist is already starting in on another offset number. I run to the side of the stage and I'm hissing at this idiot. What the fuck are you doing? He ignores me completely, leaving me to wait until their first break to confront him fully. And I am not kind. I lay into this fuckhead. I'm telling him, if you don't get your ego in check, you will single-handedly ruin this band. And I point to the crowd, which has thinned out considerably since they started playing. And I say, you see that? That's your fault. If you don't stop treating this like a one-man show, everyone who is here tonight, they're going to go home and tell all of their friends just how much you suck. Oh, he didn't like that. He did not like that one bit. And words are forming in his head. And clearly he is ready to tell me to go fuck myself. But I don't give him the chance. I look at the other band guys who are all kind of staring at their shoes, and I say, you've got 10 minutes to talk some sense into him and figure this shit out. You're a band. Act like it. Ugh, fuck. I had an easier time managing the stripper career of my girlfriend Crazy Town than these clowns. Thankfully, though, their next set went considerably better. I don't know what they said to each other off stage, but the guitarist stuck to the set list this time, and they finally won over the remaining crowd. The club manager meets me at the end of the night while the guys are tearing down. He hands me our cash and lets me know in no uncertain terms that they are lucky to be getting anything. And he's right. I can't argue with that. Most club guys would have docked the band for losing half the crowd before 10 p.m. But he's not a dick about it. He says, look, these guys need work. But once they have a couple more gigs under their belts, he'll give them another shot. And that's all I can ask. So I shake the guy's hand and I tell him I'll be in touch. Backstage, I hand out the cash and I repeat what I'd been told. The guitar player considers the $25 that I've given him and the other guys, and he asks, where's the rest of it? Ugh. For fuck's sake. Now I need to explain math to this dickhead. We got $120. That's 20 for me and 25 for every other guy. And that should have settled the matter. I mean, the other band guys look satisfied. Guitar player, however, feels his time was more valuable than $25. And he says, I'm not your guitar monkey. What? What does that even mean? The other guys are loading their gear and muttering to him to just deal with it. None of them seem happy about his unexpected display of dickery, but they clearly have no idea how to deal with it. Even me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this stupidity when the guitar player decides to solve the payment issue himself. Several large boxes of booze line the back wall, obviously bar stock for the next night. The guitarist grabs the box closest to him. It's a case of Absolute vodka, and then he walks right out the door with it. Just picked it up, walked out. And I am stunned. I can't believe he's serious. So I run after him, I grab his shoulder, and I'm trying to reason with him, but he shakes me off, and he's saying, this should cover the rest of my pay. And I'm all, you can't do this. If word gets out that this guy stole from a club, he will never play in Los Angeles again. Dude does not give a fuck. He just keeps walking out to his car. And again, I try to block him from loading the case into the back. And I'm trying to reason with him, but he just knocks me out of his way. And the force of this shove, it sends me stumbling backwards. Although I had opted for sensible shoes that night, they did nothing to stop my ankle from wrenching in an all wrong direction. I go down, and he drives off. It's the drummer who helps me gimp over to my own car and who apologizes for the band. He is begging me to not give up on them and promising to deal with the guitar player better. He keeps saying, "We've got something. I know we do." Well, that may have been true, but I'll tell you, I was in too much pain to answer. I fall asleep that night with my foot propped up on a garbage bag full of ice. It was the only thing I had. And it only barely worked. Sometime while I slept, it sprung a leak and I woke up in a pool of tepid water with my ankle just a throbbing nightmare. My ankle wasn't broken, but that doesn't mean I wasn't fucked up. Great. Now I had two problems to solve. One was treating my damn ankle, and the other was making things right with the club. Both were pricey problems, and neither were something the band had the class or resources to handle on their own. I was the manager. This was on me. Since I lacked health insurance, urgent care was going to cost me at least $200, which was also what I reasoned that case of Absolute would cost. I only had $250 free on my credit card. That meant I could only choose one. In the end, I decided it's far easier to heal an ankle than it is a reputation. I laced myself into the tightest boots I could find, hoping they'd keep the swelling down while I went to talk to the club manager. He was surprised to see me at all, and even more surprised at my offer to buy the booze. Not that he declined it. The grand total for those 12 bottles, $238.68. As the manager is ringing up my unplanned purchase, he says, "You know these guys aren't worth this, right?" Yeah, I was kind of starting to figure that out, because my next stop was the band's rehearsal space. I find the guys camped out in a heap when I get there, staring at a fuzzy antenna TV and drinking what I guessed were screwdrivers. This was it. I hated to do it, but I knew it was for the best. Guys, you're gonna have to find yourself a new manager. Guitar player just waves in good riddance, while the others do their best to try and talk me out of leaving. It didn't matter what they said. Because the thing is, much as I loved their music, and I loved it, I was finally realizing that some music isn't worth the price of the musicians. My roommate Loopy had left me 2 of her Vicodin by the bathroom sink, and I wanted nothing more than to knock them back and sleep. But then I caught sight of that case of Absolute vodka on a table by the door. A tally starts ringing up in my head. Not just of all the expenses the Van Nuys boys cost me, but all of the fucking musicians in that town. The box was 1 bottle short. Small sacrifice to the rock and roll gods, I suppose. But the rest I took. Because, damn it, I needed something to show for everything that I had invested in music, financially and personally. I grabbed that box, and I walked right out that door without ever looking back. That vodka would never equal the amount of money I paid in interest over 20 years on that last $238, but at the very least, it made it go down a little easier. Cheers, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Unwritable Rant Podcast. Don't forget to catch me on YouTube every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central for Bourbon-Soaked Live. It's a great way to meet new people in the chat, hang out, have a little bourbon, and have a great conversation. And you know what I have? Swag. I do. You can go to theunwritablерant.com and find all of my merch. I've got t-shirts, coffee mugs, hats. I think there's a hoodie in there. I don't know. But it is all very cool stuff. So check that out and be sure to check out back episodes of the podcast there as well. Now, like I said, y'all, my birthday is coming up, and my guy and I have a little bit of a weekend getaway planned, so I will not have a new podcast episode for you next weekend. But I will be back on Valentine's Day, of all days, February 14, with your next episode of the Unwritable Rant Podcast. Until then, cheers, y'all.
Go to theunwritablerant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter at Morning Neurosis.
Girl, you was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, a couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away. Let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton, hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo. Sweetest taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss.